And then there is the singularity. Modern cosmology tells us that the entire universe, every galaxy, every star, every atom, every photon of light emerged from a single dimensionless point. Before the Big Bang, everything that would ever exist was contained in that point. No space, no time, no separation. Just infinite potential compressed into something smaller than anything we could imagine. Now sit with that for a moment. A dimensionless point before time and space even exist, from which the entire universe unfolds. The Pratyabhijñāhṛdayam describes a dimensionless point, the bindu, the blue pearl from which all of consciousness unfolds onto its own screen. The blue pearl appears in meditation as a tiny, brilliant point of light, and when you enter it, it contains the infinite. There is no time, no space, no I, no thou, no subject, no object. It just is. The ancient sages had a phrase for this recognition: Tattvamasi, thou art that. You are the singularity. You always have been. I am telling you these are the same thing, seen from different directions. The blue pearl is the singularity. The blue pearl, the bindu, the point of light, is the Big Bang, experienced from the inside. The mystics arrived there first. The physicists are catching up. And one day, I believe, science will come to that conclusion fully. My name is Don Lee Daniels. Some of you may remember me as Swami Jnanananda Saraswati. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, I'm glad you're here, truly. For over 40 years, I've been exploring consciousness beyond the body through advanced meditation, conscious out-of-body experiences, and the awakening of Kundalini Shakti, the underlying force that the mystics of every tradition have always known. What you're about to hear is an issue of my newsletter, Listening at the Edge of Consciousness. If you're not yet a subscriber, I invite you to join us. It's free. The link is in the description below and in the show notes. In the last issue, I shared something deeply personal. My experience of entering the blue pearl, that ultimate point of light, in meditation, dissolving into pure consciousness and watching the entire process of manifestation and return mapped perfectly by a 1,000-year-old text called the Pratyabhijñāhṛdayam, the heart of recognition. Today, I want to go even further. I want to share the practices that can begin opening this doorway for you. And I want to show you that what the ancient sages discovered through contemplation and meditation, modern science and the pioneers of out-of-body experience are now confirming from completely different directions. The blue pearl is not a relic of the past. It is alive right now, within you, within everybody, and the physicists and the mystics are finally meeting at the same door. One thing I want you to know before we go further. When the blue pearl appears in meditation, it is blue. And there is a reason the ancient scriptures are specific about this. This is why Krishna is depicted with blue skin. This is why Shiva is known as the blue-throated one. The blue light is not arbitrary. It is the color of consciousness itself at its most concentrated point. But here is also what I have observed over 40 years of practice. Not everyone arrives at blue immediately. Some practitioners first see white light, or gold, or purple. Some see a luminous point rimmed with different colors, or even stars. These are real experiences, and they matter. They are the doorway opening. If that is what you see, do not dismiss it. Focus on it intently. As your practice deepens, the blue tends to reveal itself at the center of whatever light appears. The tradition has always known this. Trust the practice and trust what you see. There is another ancient text from this same tradition, the Vijñana Bhairava Tantra, that offers 112 specific practices for entering these states of consciousness. It is over 1,000 years old, and it reads like a field manual written by someone who's been there and come back. 3 of its teachings speak directly to the Blue Pearl experience, and I want to be upfront with you about something. When you first hear them, they will sound almost too simple, and that is by design. The most powerful practices in this tradition are deceptively simple on the surface and endlessly deep in application. A beginning meditator can start with them tonight. A practitioner with 40 years of experience is still discovering new dimensions within them. Do not mistake simplicity for lack of power. There is a reason these practices work, and it goes far deeper than relaxation or focus. In the tradition of Nondual Shaiva Tantra, my tradition, these practices are called bhavana, a Sanskrit term often translated as creative contemplation. But even that translation barely scratches the surface. Bhavana is not visualization the way the modern mind understands it. It is not pretending. It is contemplation that brings its object into being. It is the power of manifestation at the level of consciousness. My tradition teaches that your individual awareness and the universal creative power of consciousness are not two different things. They are the same power operating at different scales. When you contemplate the boundless sky with sustained attention and feeling, you're not imagining boundlessness. You are activating the very force that creates reality itself. Your mind does not know the difference between what is vividly created in deep contemplation and what you call ordinary reality, because both arise from the same source. You are that source. Bhavana is the practice of remembering it. This is the engine beneath every practice I will share with you in this newsletter, in the course I'm building, and in everything that follows. We will go much deeper into bhavana in future issues. For now, just know this. When I tell you a practice is simple, I'm not telling you it's small. I'm telling you the door is closer than you think. The first instructs the practitioner to gaze at the open sky, the clear, blue, boundless sky without clouds, without edges, and allow awareness to take on the qualities of what it sees: eternal, supportless, limitless, without boundary. That sounds basic. It is not. What happens when you actually sustain this practice, even for a few minutes, with steady attention and a quiet mind, is that awareness begins to detach from its habit of clinging to objects. The sky has no edges for the mind to grab onto. There is nothing to analyze, nothing to name, nothing to categorize. The mind, derived of its usual handholds, begins to dissolve into the space itself. It can happen remarkably quickly. The blueness of that open sky absorbs the mind the way the blue pearl does. And as your awareness takes on the qualities of the sky, something extraordinary begins to happen. The boundaries of your own perception begin to open. The sense of being located inside a body starts to soften. You begin to taste directly what the blue pearl reveals fully, that awareness itself is boundless, and that you are that awareness. The text says that at that very moment, you acquire the nature of Bhairava, which is my tradition's name for supreme consciousness itself. Not after years of practice, at that moment. The teaching is that recognition is always one breath away. The practice simply clears the path. The second teaching is even more radical. It instructs the practitioner to contemplate the body, your body, dissolving simultaneously, not gradually, not piece by piece, but all at once. The entire sense of physical form releases into open space. Again, this sounds almost naive until you try it. What actually happens when the practice takes hold is a complete shift in the way you experience your own existence. The solid boundary between you and the world becomes transparent. You realize the body is not a wall. It's a field of energy, vibrating, alive, and porous. And what lies on the other side of that transparency is not emptiness. It is fullness, the presence of everything before it takes form. This is exactly what I experienced when my hands and arms turned blue and dissolved into light. The body did not die. It revealed what it actually was: consciousness temporarily wearing the appearance of a body. The third practice is the one that changed everything for me, and it is the very first practice the Vijñana Bhairava Tantra offers. It points directly at something you do 21,600 times a day without even noticing. Your breath traces an arc between two pause points. The outer pause above the crown of the head, in Sanskrit, is called the Dvadishanta, where the inhalation has filled up and has not yet begun to empty. That outer pause above the crown of the head. And then the exhalation, where there's a pause at the heart area where the exhalation completes itself. Pause. In those two gaps, the mind has nothing to hold on to. It stops. Pure consciousness becomes available. Now, you do not force a hold. You simply do not rush away from the stillness. Just pause. When I was a young Swami practicing among my fellow monks, we discovered something that still makes me smile. Everyone who was practicing this ended up with kind of a preference. Some of us were drawn to the top of the inhalation, resting in that pause, and then gently pressing the breath upward into the Ajna chakra, the third eye. That's my usual preference. And it is there in that still point that the blue pearl would often grow brighter and brighter, and sometimes explode into the infinite. Others preferred the bottom of the exhalation, surrendering into that empty space and allowing the breath to merge with consciousness itself, dissolving outward in every direction. We used to call them innies and outies, depending on which preference you had. It was our way of laughing at something so deeply profound that laughter was the only honest response. And then there were those, like me, who often used both, depending on how quiet the mind was on any given day. Because when the Kundalini is active, and it is intelligent energy, it will choose for you. All you have to do is feel and surrender to the natural process. This is one of the most fascinating things a practitioner can discover when you tune into the energy of the universe, which is the Kundalini within you. It takes over. The practice is no longer something you do. It is something that moves through you. And when you learn to surrender to that, you know you're on the fast track. So try both, and you'll know which one is more preferable, or let the Shakti show you. And in that stillness, the blue pearl appears. Not because you summoned it, because you stopped long enough to see what was already there. And that is where you can enter into it. Now, here's a modern example that may help you understand how natural this actually is. If you've ever put on a VR headset, a virtual reality headset, you know exactly what I'm describing. The moment you enter that virtual world, something remarkable happens. Your mind immediately assumes the position and outlook of the avatar. The sense of your own physical body dissolves. You forget where your arms and legs are. You are in that world, and your mind has completely adapted to the new reality in seconds. Now, I've practiced VR flight simulations. I love to fly both in the inner world and the outer world. And the experience of flying in VR is astonishingly realistic. Your mind accepts it completely. And here is what fascinated me as a practitioner. That same capacity to enter a new reality and inhabit it fully is exactly what happens when you enter an out-of-body experience or move into the astral body. The mind adapts instantly. The new environment becomes your world. It's almost as if you've always been there. Now, the ancients did not have VR headsets, but they understood the same principle, and it is the same principle as bhavana. Consciousness is not locked to the physical body. It can shift, adapt, and inhabit new dimensions of experience with extraordinary ease, if you know how to allow it. This is also why so many people who have had an OBE, a near-death experience, or who have entered multidimensional states in deep meditation report the same thing, that world felt more real than the world they were living in now. The colors are more vivid. The awareness is sharper. The sense of being alive is more intense. It is not that those experiences are imaginary. It is that ordinary waking consciousness is operating at a fraction of its actual capacity. These are not metaphors. These are techniques. They are instructions left by practitioners who explored the same territory I've explored, mapped it carefully, and left directions for the rest of us. And these are just the beginning. I've shared 3 of the 112 practices in the Vijñana Bhairava Tantra. And I chose them because they're accessible to anyone tonight without any prior experience. But do not let their simplicity fool you. These 3 practices alone have taken meditators into the deepest states of consciousness for over 1,000 years. And beyond these, there are far more detailed techniques, specific methods for working with breath, energy, sound, and the threshold states that lead directly into conscious out-of-body experience. We will go there together, step by step. And here is what makes this even more remarkable. Modern pioneers of out-of-body experience, Robert Monroe, William Buhlman, Thomas Campbell, and others, have independently mapped the same territory using entirely different methods. Most of them have never heard of the Vijñana Bhairava Tantra, and yet their descriptions of consciousness separating from the body, adapting to new dimensions, and encountering a reality more vivid than ordinary waking life match those ancient teachings with extraordinary precision. 1,000 years apart, no shared language, no shared tradition for the most part, the same discoveries. I'm sharing these teachings with you here because I want you to understand that these experiences are not reserved for monks or special people, but there is a depth to these practices that go far beyond what I can convey in a single newsletter. I am building a 7-day course called Into the Light, 7 days to a conscious out-of-body experience. It will take you step by step into these specific techniques and others, the threshold states, and the direct practices that make conscious out-of-body experiences possible. When it's ready, you'll be the first to know. Different rivers, the same ocean. Now here is where it gets interesting for the modern mind. In 1975, a physicist named Fritjof Capra published a book called The Tao of Physics. Now, Capra did something no mainstream physicist had done before. He actively merged mysticism with quantum physics, building a bridge between 2 worlds that most scientists consider completely separate. He demonstrated that the constant creation and destruction of subatomic particles in the quantum field is structurally identical to what the ancient traditions described as the dance of consciousness: arising, sustaining, dissolving, arising again. An endless pulse, a vibration at the heart of everything. He chose to name his book after the Tao, the Chinese term for the ultimate mystery of existence, because he understood that physics was arriving at the same door the mystics had walked through centuries before. He was one of the first to say so publicly, and it changed the conversation forever. The tradition I practice calls that pulse spanda, the primordial vibration of consciousness itself. Capra saw it through equations and particle accelerators. The sages of Nondual Shaiva Tantra felt it from the inside in meditation over 1,000 years before modern physics existed. Around the same time, there was a psychiatrist named Stanislav Grof who was exploring consciousness from a completely different direction through direct experiential research into non-ordinary states of awareness. Grof and Capra became close collaborators, and they co-taught seminars together at the Esalen Institute called Journeys Beyond Space and Time. Capra presenting quantum physics in the morning, Grof presenting consciousness research in the afternoon. Two brilliant minds approaching the same mystery from opposite sides. Capra's work deeply influenced Grof's own understanding of what his research was revealing. Now, fortunately, I met Grof briefly in 1990 when he visited the ashram where I was living. I was not yet a Swami, just a young seeker immersed in meditation and practice. But even then, I was struck by the convergence I was witnessing. Here was a Western psychiatrist describing states of consciousness that I was experiencing directly every day in meditation. The physics, the psychology, and the practice were all pointing in the same direction. I didn't fully understand how significant that convergence was at the time. I do now. A few years later, while living in a small ashram near the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, I met another person who deepened that convergence even further. Dr. Richard D. Mann was a psychology professor at the university who had written a book called The Light of Consciousness. His own exploration of the Blue Pearl and the teachings of our shared tradition, and examined through the lens of transpersonal psychology. We were in the same lineage. We sat in the same meditation hall. And one evening, over a long conversation at his home, I began to see clearly that the mystical experiences I was having and the science of the mind were not separate worlds. They were two sides of the same investigation. Those encounters changed the direction of my life. Meeting Grof and Dr. Mann, witnessing how Western psychology and the tradition of Nondual Shaiva Tantra could illuminate each other, planted the seeds that eventually led me to earn my degree in psychology and later a master's degree in educational technology. The mystical, the psychological, and the scientific were never in conflict for me. They merged. They informed each other. And they all pointed toward the same recognition. Consciousness is the ground of everything, and it can be explored systematically through direct experience. It is why I teach the way I teach, not from one tradition alone, not from science alone, not from personal experience alone, but from the place where all three meet. And then there is the singularity. Modern cosmology tells us that the entire universe, every galaxy, every star, every atom, every photon of light emerged from a single dimensionless point. Before the Big Bang, everything that would ever exist was contained in that point. No space, no time, no separation. just infinite potential compressed into something smaller than anything we could imagine. Now sit with that for a moment. A dimensionless point before time and space even exist, from which the entire universe unfolds. The Pratyabhijñāhṛdayam describes a dimensionless point, the bindu, the blue pearl from which all of consciousness unfolds onto its own screen. The blue pearl appears in meditation as a tiny, brilliant point of light, and when you enter it, it contains the infinite. There is no time, no space, no I, no thou, no subject, no object. It just is. The ancient sages had a phrase for this recognition: Tattvamasi, thou art that. You are the singularity. You always have been. I am telling you these are the same thing, seen from different directions. The blue pearl is the singularity. The blue pearl, the bindu, the point of light, is the Big Bang, experienced from the inside. The mystics arrived there first. The physicists are catching up. And one day, I believe, science will come to that conclusion fully. They're getting very close. The physicists mapped it from the outside with mathematics. The sages mapped it from the inside with awareness. And I've sat in meditation and watched the blue pearl explode into the totality of creation, and then watched creation contract back into that silent, single, luminous point. The map is the same. The territory is the same. Only the instruments are different. So what does this mean for you? I'm often asked whether experiences like this are reserved for monks, mystics, spiritual adepts, or just special people. And my answer is no, heck no. The blue pearl did not reveal something unique to me. It revealed something universal. The light I entered is the same light that exists within you. The consciousness that dissolved my sense of separation is the same consciousness looking through your eyes right now. The mystics of every tradition have pointed towards this truth in different ways. Nondual Shaiva Tantra calls it recognition. The Christ spoke of the kingdom of heaven within, the pearl of great price. The sages of East and West have all attempted to describe what ultimately cannot be captured by words, but it can be experienced. Direct experience reshapes your reality, and you can learn how to access these states of consciousness deliberately and at will. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to move to India. You don't need to withdraw from the world. You simply need to begin exploring the extraordinary capacities already present within your own consciousness. The doorway is closer than you think. It's a breath away, a thought away, a moment of stillness away. The blue pearl is not somewhere else. It is a reminder of what has always been there. That's the end of this issue of Listening at the Edge of Consciousness. The most important thing you can do right now is subscribe to the free weekly newsletter, Direct Experience, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Technology, and Practical Guidance for exploring consciousness beyond the body and deep within. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, please follow the show. And if this teaching moved you, a review helps more people find their way here. We're just beginning. Dive inward and fly free.